Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Amosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome once again to The Lost Signals Reviews Film and TV. I am Chris Morgan. I'm here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
And I want to give a shout out to Kane Brewing Company, a Jersey brewery. It's fairly good.
Jersey represent.
All right, Jersey. And Scott Thurlow over there on the boards.
You're all a bunch of hypocritic assholes who never appreciate my writings.
You're right.
And we are still in the midst of our global cinema exploration of the planet. Today's offering comes from Argentina. It is called The Distinguished Citizen. You can find this on Netflix.
Yep.
And Scott, is it you who has the funny loud one?
It is. So it's sort of a maybe not obscure reference, but a little bit of a not widely known one. So I've gone with this movie is Californication.
And Mr. Manzer, would you like to talk about the plot, please, sir?
A Nobel laureate in writing is a bit world-weary, so he decides to go back to his roots, return to his town, and he can't always go home again. He gets invited back as the distinguished citizen of his town.
Yeah, to receive a great honor and so forth.
And he rekindles lost loves, but who happen to be married, and meets jealous artists, locals in the town, and just again, it isn't what he imagined it to be, and it ends up with him being dead. But what a twist! He isn't dead. He is instead written another novel about this, and he is receiving accolades for that.
In fact, called Distinguished Citizen, like in universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was a very well crafted artistic piece. The narrative is fairly simple and it has been done before, but it has a touch of cynicism but with nostalgia.
Yeah.
And what I really love, this is a character study, and the main character in this is very complex. At times you really like him and root for him. At times you don't like him because he can be a selfish bastard. But overall, you're intrigued the entire time, and they kind of stylistically, but also narratively, set up that something awful is going to happen at the end of this film. So they start building up, and you know it's coming. You're just waiting the entire time for that shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And that keeps you really invested in the narrative throughout.
No, I largely agree, and maybe it's just my weakness for the source material. Imagining myself once upon a time in alternate reality being a writer and what it'd be like. And like I said, my logline references Californication, the show, in which a sort of older, like you said, world-weary-ish writer, he's trying to figure himself out. He thinks he's sort of come to the end of his talents, or narratively, as you mentioned, the opening scene is him receiving the Nobel Prize and him announcing, I'm done writing, I've now achieved everything.
And rejecting the accolade at all. He's
almost backhandedly accepting it. So yeah, I mean, I was quite enthralled throughout. It's cut up little chapters, I think 5 or 6 chapters throughout its running time. And yeah, yes, you said, it's a character study, and I enjoyed following this character, seeing at first you're quite sympathetic towards him, and we'll go speak of that later. And then you realize some other facts about him as he encounters the people that he left behind from his hometown, and encountering them 20, 30 years later and so forth. But yeah, I like following Daniel, is his name, Daniel's journey, and I think it kept me it kept me up throughout. I don't think it was a lull at any point, and I think it was a very strong narrative, even if it was, yes, simple and something maybe you've seen done before. I think it was well told, well constructed in this instance.
Mm-hmm. This movie had me at the first scene. I mean, I loved when he went up there and says, basically, thank you, I'm flattered, very flattered, but awards by your peers are like basically meaningless. It's just how I feel about like big award shows. Like anybody who's made it to a certain degree, you know, I feel like these things should be for smaller, to gain recognition to smaller artists, which ironically enough, he actually goes back into town and judges an art show.
Yeah.
So he rejects the Nobel.
Reluctantly.
He rejects the Nobel Prize. You know, basically saying, thank you for ruining my career. Your accolades have screwed up my life.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to town and doesn't want to do this art show thing. He like rejects pretty much everything. And then he finds this one picture of a cow, and he was going to reject it. And on the other side's like an advertisement for feed. And the other, which you grasp in this little town, is the other artistic scholar. And he's just like, oh, this thing cannot be against the wall. It should be in the middle of the thing. And the other guy's like, I agree. You know, they're both in these like,
and they both end up chased out of town at the end.
And they both chased out of town. They're both these ivory tower artists.
No, I feel like the other guy isn't an ivory tower artist. He's just perhaps one of the realest people in that town. Or he's not from the town. He's from a nearby town or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, he's like a guest judge, I believe, is what they
And
say.
they're like, no, you can leave because you didn't play by the rules.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're like, you've got to give, it's just like, but it also kind of validates what he said at the beginning. Cause it's like, no, you have to choose at least one from the town. It's like, why? You know, you're not choosing it on merit. No, this movie had me from the word go. I do love this movie quite a bit. I'm definitely giving it a very, very strong 3.
Yeah, I think sorry.
Can't add any more to the narratively what you guys said.
Yeah, I think it was really well paced. In fact, like I don't think there was a dull moment. Like it moved along at a very nice, like as things were set up and as he starts exploring, like again reconnecting and re-encountering old friends and acquaintances and so forth, and even new ones in the town, his childhood town that he returns to. I was just very much enraptured, like following him through. Like, can't wait to see who's going to see next, or who's going to come up to him next and say whatever, and he's going to have to, interact with them. So yeah, I enjoyed the character and I enjoyed the plot quite a bit. I'm looking at a 3.
I'm going to reiterate this point because it's almost like a murder mystery, but done in reverse. That something bad's going to happen, so that anticipation of
when and where
conclusion,
yeah.
and that works perfectly for it. So I'm going to give it a 3 as well.
Very nice.
Okay, and Scott, would you like to continue with the themes, please?
Yeah, so we touched upon a bit of them. I think number 1 is, any might like this, is you can't go home again, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems quite obvious. Again, he was a very famous writer, getting all his accolades, and then living in Europe away from his hometown for 20, 30 years, whatever it was. And sort of like, not on a whim, but like he gets invited. So one of the funny things, maybe this is style, but after he gets the award, and like his assistant's like, there's this and that. He's like, nah, cancel it. Don't want to go to that. Like, they want you to speak and have a lecture at whatever, like in Germany, a college in Germany or whatever, like an academic event. He's like, nah. Right? So he goes back and like, he's sort of like trying to reconnect. And one of the big cruxes is that like, he gets called out for like, he uses, of course, as any writer might do, a lot of his characters are based upon the people who grew up with, which is one of the main conflicts we'll flow into in a second. So therefore, they're calling him out on. He's like, you made us all like assholes. Oh, we're just like little bumblefuck nobodies to you. We're all idiots here. And like, now you're the great artist who's living abroad. Except
not always. Because there's that one character who's like, you made my father immortal with your portrayal of him. And he's like, no, that wasn't my intent, nor did I base up. But you did. Like,
right, sure. Like the guy like sort of like idolizes him for it. And like it's again, it's a character study of like narcissism and so forth, which I think any good writer needs. He even says it himself, like any good writer needs to be a bit vain, to succeed. And like I kind of agree with that, even though it might make you kind of an asshole to the people that you left behind, if you will. And like a lot of it, he even says like I became a writer to try to escape this town, this fate, and now like I'm almost ironically going to be beholden to it. So I think that was really well handled. It came through his character and through his interactions. And again, it's very well married to the narrative itself. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to give it a damn strong 1 on themes. I think those are the main themes, and you guys can go on and point out anything else.
So perhaps I should have mentioned this in plot, but there's a interesting, considering the reveal at the end. I'm interested to see how much of, because it's obviously all the events happened, but did they happen to the extent of the narrative that's presented?
Sure.
Or is this a heightened story that
via his perception.
It's fascinating to me in reflection over how much of it was true and how much of it was the falsification of an author.
That's a good point too. Yeah, and perhaps that's like again welded into that.
Oh, so there's the meta thematic, but you touched on every major point in there.
Well, I was rewatching it. He said when he's when his assistant's like saying you've got this, he's like, nah. My favorite one of that, of course, being like this Pakistani director wants to adapt this thing. He's like, do they have no storytellers? But what I love is he turns all this stuff down, and then they cut to the scene where he's got this smiling sense of self-satisfaction, and his assistant comes in and he's like, I'm going to go to Salas.
Yeah.
And she's like, want me to come with you? He goes, no, I'm going to go by myself. I mean, part of me is just like, he's going in there with an agenda. We may not know what the agenda is. Maybe the book at the end is his revelation of his agenda. I mean, he even says before that, about he never went back to the town, but he even acknowledges at some point right before, at the beginning there that, he has always had the town with him. Like he acknowledges that he does this. And I really love the fact that, right away when he gets picked up from the airport by that guy, they break down and they start a fire, and he uses
his own books. And even comments upon it.
Yeah, he comments upon it, and then the next day the guy goes and takes a crap, and he uses a page from his own book.
That was a funny moment for sure. I loved it.
It's just like this guy is this sometimes self-deprecating and sometimes earnest, sometimes want to be earnest, but there's always a sense of narcissism about him. And he's definitely, we'll get to him later, but thematically, I give it a very strong 1. I mean, these are all little details that go basically into what you said, but the movies is very, very, very fun to pick apart.
Yes.
Because of the themes, so.
For sure.
And I guess it's to me with the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I would say antagonist is kind of like you can't go home again as well, because he kind of creates his own Daniel kind of creates his own misery in a way. So he does go home, and the town is like an action and a reaction to him.
Yeah.
And those actions and reactions kind of shape his character throughout the thing. So he goes in there and he doesn't want the fame.
He's trying to avoid being
even on the airplane, they're like, hey, we've got this famous author, and he's like, oh God, I don't want, that's part of the reason he didn't bring his assistant. And he's very humbled. He's seemingly humbled when they show him the slideshow or the video of his life, and he's talking about I met the Queen of Sweden and said our little town, queen is much prettier. But as things evolve, I mean, the town, it's kind of hard. It's one of those nebulous. It's actually not nebulous and nebulous at the same time.
Yes,
because
I see what you're saying.
It's a compilation of things that do antagonize him. It is very much an action reaction kind of thing. So I have to give it a 1 because of that, because I don't believe there's, as sometimes we discuss, there's one true antagonist, but it is definitely a, I don't know. There's an analogy I'm looking for, so I'll let you guys go on.
Yeah, let me just jump in quickly. I do like that nebulous, both not, right? So he goes back to find something about himself, perhaps not maybe being lording over people, but kind of doing that too. But then the whole town sort of turns against him once they point out hey, you made us all idiots. You built your career on taking your childhood and your youth, and now all the people you knew who were real people in this town and putting them as caricatures in your novels, right? So as him trying to reconcile that, struggle with that, where he came from, right? He briefly tries to touch base with his old girlfriend, and that goes awry, and other things go awry as well, which we'll get to in protagonist in a sec. But yeah, he feels the crush of that, but also it's just trying to deal with the fame you have found, and then dealing with what the reality of it is with people who knew you before you found that fame. So yeah, I liked it quite a bit, and I think it works on all fronts.
And I like the gauge of it can be his lectures, because each day there's less and less people.
I was going to mention that in style, but it was an amazing touch.
Yeah,
yes.
Go on. There's a lot of amazing touches in this,
yes.
I think you can, in a sense, personify the aggression of the town through his friend Antonio, who basically is... Daniel is always one sentence away from stealing his wife away from him because she's still...
It still seems someone has feelings for him.
And he also slept with his daughter at a point, not knowing it was the case at the time.
That's the Californication. Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
I think we failed to mention the plot.
Blew off a dinner in his honor, too.
Yeah. And of course, her boyfriend is the one to fire the shot that kills him in fiction.
Right.
But, so, like, they're the personifications of that aggression, but it really is
You're right about
the
that.
town that everything you guys said about the fame and the contradictions of his character, and it's
egoism that comes along with that as well.
Fascinating piece to watch.
Yeah, agreed. I think but that means I think antagonistic forces are strong.
I do have one thing to say is that because you do root for him at points, but you actually dislike him at points, is just in the same way that the town grows
exactly.
to dislike him.
Yeah, it's really well
it
said,
works perfectly.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a nice parallel mirror there. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of funny because the town, and I guess so much of this is going to bleed over to everything else, but the town is itself its own character.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So, Ian, would you like to continue with protagonist, please?
Danielle is one of the more fascinating characters I've seen in film recently. And we watched a lot of good films, and he perhaps stands out by how real this character is.
Yeah, man.
As I just mentioned, all the contradictions of his character, all of the narcissism mixed with the self-deprecation. And the struggles are. It's just it's an impressive acting job. It's an impressive job of directing and the script and everything that went into this character. And you both want to see him succeed. You want to see him punished. I don't know if the ending is particularly satisfactory because they kind of had it both ways. But overall, it's watching a real person deal with struggles.
Yes, I agree. It's like you said, fascinating character, excellently portrayed, excellently scripted, and so forth. And yeah, like, he's kind of a scumbag. At first, of course, it's sympathetic. It sets it up like, okay, this guy's going to his hometown, and it's everyone in the town, like, who's an asshole. No, actually, they got some points. Maybe he's kind of an asshole too. Like, and it's messy, right? Like, that's what life is, right? He has some positive sides to him, and he's got certainly some flaws to him as well. And you're right, like, that makes him a well-rounded character study, and the way it's presented in the film, you can buy into it. It's very, very grounded in reality.
And what's interesting is the presentation of him that we get to know is a fictionalized version of him that he describes.
Right. So it's always like that meta, like, sort of like layer.
There's always that meta aspect that you have to consider.
Absolutely.
He is definitely one of these characters that probably is insufferable to know as a person, but is an awesome character, and is definitely somebody, like, he's the kind of person, like, when you are at work or at a town hall or there's a public or some kind of public speaker where you just sit there and watch and you try not to laugh, but you're just kind of enjoying his interaction, his everything we discussed about Daniel, his self-destructive nature,
the way he behaves and handles himself.
But I think what is fascinating, I took this down as a note, and I'm glad I remembered to write it, was at the beginning at the Nobel Prize speech. He gets up and walks over and he stands in front of the king and queen. And, like, there's just, like, one person clapping.
Citizen Kane clap.
And then he kind of, like, looks a little more proudly. And then everybody applauds, and even the people behind him. And I'm like, at what point is this reality or is this his narcissism taking over? Like, it's kind of like, he's rewriting history. It's just like, okay, this isn't working for me. Okay, everybody's applauding for me. I mean, it's just, there's this great nebulous
as Ian said, like a meta thread that runs throughout.
But that, I mean, they started right from the word go. He is probably, I agree with you, he's probably one of the standout characters that.
You're absolutely right. I would hate this character in real life.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm so much like him.
Yeah.
But
Maybe that's why I like him so much. But yeah, either way,
yeah, exactly.
either way, it's a fantastically done character. So I think that's a 1.
Absolutely. And Scott, it's to you with supporting characters.
Yeah, man. So as you said, Chris, I'm going to steal this from you, but I was going to say anyway that the whole town, so like every little encounter he has, like the guy who comes up to him and says, "Oh, the little boy riding a bike in your story, that was my father, and thank you for immortalizing him. Come to my house for dinner." And then he's like, "Oh, I'm flattered, like, thank you, but I'm not going to come to the house for dinner." And the guy, he runs to him later. He's in town for like a week or so. He's like, "You never came to my house." He's like, "I never said I was going to come to your house," right? Like all stuff like, and another, yes, Californication like thing is he's giving a lecture early on, and like obviously attractive like 20-something-year-old, I would say, like asks him a question. She's like reading his book and stuff. And then she comes to his hotel room and he sleeps with her and like finds out it's his best friend's daughter
who's also his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, who's married to his ex-girlfriend. So like Antonio, the art critic guy who like calls him out like in the middle of his lecture, like telling him like, "You're a scumbag, you're a rat, you like betrayed our town."
who's a worse version of Daniel. It's the fascinating.
He's the version of Daniel who didn't make it out of town, so
Wait,
now he's in town.
Is that are you talking about the artist that drew the wine?
Whatever one he was. Yeah,
what is Still Life?
That's Still Life. Yeah.
Yeah. So like actually the mayor's a quite good character. I loved him.
The mayor is really the key secondary character because watching him crumble along with it, like he's the impetus
stuck in
for
both
everything,
worlds.
right?
Yeah, like he's friendly with Daniel, but he wants like to present like, oh, we're a community, we're coming together, we're having fun, we're celebrating culture, and Daniel calls pushes back on that.
Imagine though him having to deal with the death of a famed author in his town.
Yeah, he would lose his fucking mind. So yeah, like I think they're all great. Like Irene is his ex-girlfriend who's married to Antonio. I think her scenes are excellent as well, and the actress did an amazing job on that front. Excuse me. And the script gave him all a lot to work with. So on a lot of fronts, like the town is brought to life. I feel as if I'm living this town with this guy, visiting it with him, and like all these quirky characters are popping up. People from his past, people are like glad handing him and so forth, expecting something out of him that he can't quite, like, he doesn't want to deliver on, but he doesn't want to let them down either.
I forgot about this. There's the one where the guy has the wheelchair thing. Yeah. And that's a part important, I think, really to Daniel's character is like he initially doesn't want to do it, but ends up going and buying a wheelchair for a disabled kid because he's a good person at heart for all of his fame.
Yeah. And you're right. That says a lot about him. Like that scene, like says a lot about the secondary characters and as him. So all I'm saying is overall, the motley crew filled out his little town, the Salas, in like what was it, like a couple 100 miles away from Buenos Aires. Right, it's so believable, and everyone did a great job within their roles that I got to give it a lot of credit.
Yeah, I was also going to say the desk clerk at the hotel.
Oh yeah, that's
who
right.
Writes short stories.
Good call.
That's the other moment of altruism, shall I say? Because he's just like, you show great promise. I
don't think he was sincere about that. At that point.
He was. So what I'm saying is, he's altruistic in that he actually recognizes another true artist in this world of mediocrity and pretension. That a still life from art class and paint still life 101 is upset.
The Pope.
Here's those horrifying dogs.
Yeah, so
which should be featured above us, but I mean, it's also reflecting his subtle narcissism as well.
Exactly.
Obviously, he sees himself in this as well.
I'm glad you brought that in there because it's always there. But yeah,
and when we talk, I'll continue with the rest of the town when we get to style because the town as a character it goes into a lot is developed through a lot of style.
So I do have a confession to make. Chris and I recorded this episode a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And we had audio problems.
It was a two-man show that we lost the audio on,
So I didn't watch this again. But this, sometimes people like Steve-O will mention, like, this is a movie that'll stick with me. This is a movie that actually stuck with me. I remember clearly all of the townsfolk that were part of, maybe not all of them, but like a good majority of them like have left an impression with me over the weeks. And I have to give it full credit for that.
Yeah, I think that speaks to it for sure.
Yeah, I wanted this on today to refresh me of some stuff, and I found myself not doing anything else but sitting down and watching it. And I'm like, no, there's some things I have to do. And
it's a compelling story, and compellingly done, and side characters I think rounded out really well nicely.
Exactly. So I think we're all on ones with the supporting, and to me, it's dialogue, and it's really funny when we're talking about a foreign film and you see the translations, because reading subtitles is kind of an art. You kind of have to learn how to integrate it, but the dialogue I thought was great. I mean, the dialogue, there's a lot of visuals in here, but the dialogue really works, and the actors bring that dialogue to life. And to be honest with you, again, his Nobel Prize, if nothing else in this film.
Yeah, dude, it sets
his
the tone.
Nobel Prize speech was getting a 1 for me. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, I don't care what the rest is. This really did set the tone well. I thought the rest of the dialogue reflected all these people's actions. I don't know what else to say.
I think it was all solid to great, and like on top of that, so yes, the initial Nobel laureate speech, and then when he's giving lectures, and when he gets interrupted by the artist, I thought that exchange was really well done. And when he's talking, like you said, talking to the desk clerk, like telling him, like, "Oh, you have a great style. Like, I'm gonna help you out." Like, I think it's one of the best. Again, yes, it's of course an interpretations or subtitling, but from what we have seen so far in the season of foreign films, it's up there for me. Like, it was like very snappy, like back and forth. It was way more than serviceable.
Yeah.
Like, as what's my baseline. So I'm going to give it a lot of credit. I think it was really well done. All the interactions made sense to who the characters were and what they were trying to interact with each other and what they were saying to each other. So yeah, there were a number of scenes that just elevated the dialogue to me, and I'm giving it a lot of credit.
So I remember this. I think I brought it up in the first recording. Is I don't speak Spanish, but I have a knowledge of Spanish.
A couple words.
And like different sentences and whatnot. I actually thought that the translation, the subtitles of it were fairly accurate in capturing nuance of what. So,
good point.
Especially in, from what I understand, in the Caribbean Hispanic, like tranquilo can mean a lot of different things in different contexts. So I thought that they did a really good job in this film of handling in what's stylistically and narratively a very nuanced film. The language in there is as well.
Yes.
I thought they did a great
point.
job.
Good point, for sure. Good call.
Agreed.
Definitely one for me.
And to Ian, with you.
So I'm going to make a weird comparison here. It reminded me a bit of Roma.
It's funny because I thought that myself too.
In that it attempted to, along with the story it was telling, to capture the society,
the sense of life there.
Yeah. Doing like shots. I remember they had this. I think it was an ice cream shop that was run down now, and he goes up and like, "Oh, this is my
my childhood home." I believe, yeah.
There were they did a great job of building this town stylistically to build up its character as well, because it as a character was an important aspect. And I thought that it was visually a fantastic film, prop-wise, and like the art scene and all of that. There's one scene right at the beginning where he's going to his house right after, where the gate closes upon him to show his
like
isolation.
Ivory towers him, if you will. Yeah.
I mean, he was actually hit from his house. He can actually look down upon Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that was great was when he's walking above it, you see like a modern library of books behind him.
Yeah, that was an amazing shot.
I'm
glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, because it just says so much about his character that he really is this. I mean, you don't see any like TVs or anything like that, which would probably add to his disdain for the theater. And in a lot of ways, this is a Salinger like character. Isolation, doesn't really grasp, doesn't want. From what you gather, doesn't really want his work adapted. And as far as the town goes, the thing I love about the town was his car gets broke. The car from the guy who drove him from the airport, his chauffeur in this podunk little car breaks down. His friend comes and picks him up in this brand new pickup truck, and they're driving in there, and it's like a gated community. It's like this nice little sign, the bricks thing that says Salas, and you get into the town, and about the nicest place in the town is Town Hall. I mean, and you go through this town, and you see like the disused ice cream or a barbershop that used to be his
The
house.
lagoon that was completely
dry.
Dry, yeah.
His the overgrown cemetery, the blocks where, and like you have like little Spider-Man, like they're like these souvenir stands with like these inflatable Spider-Mans and caps on them. That nobody's buying this shit,
Yeah.
but it's there.
They're just there. Yeah,
And
exactly.
it always seemed like there's like a dog somewhere walking around.
Yeah, wild dogs are just like wandering around the town.
And there's bikes over. So I mean, you really got a sense of like this is a working class town, and some of it's more rundown than others. And the city hall and the entrance to this are a way of keeping up appearances. But once you peel back the layers, there is this sense of this is a really lived in town.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, damn it. That's what I was going to say.
Go on.
But yeah, I mean, that's probably the point. If you didn't like add that there at the end, that I was going to bring up. So, and we mentioned this earlier too. So there's some very nice visual gags. Like, for example, again, when the town starts turning against him, when people are saying, "Oh, come on, don't listen to this asshole." Like, he made all of you look like fools. Like, so as he's giving lectures throughout the week, less and less people are there. Like, it's not commented upon. So at the very end, he's talking like 4 people, and they're like, right.
His statue gets
gets the face. There's another good moment I thought. So it's when he's like trying to he's having a drive with Irene, his former girlfriend, who's not married to his best friend, and like he steals a kiss with her, and then the car breaks down. Mm-hmm. So she calls the roadside assistance, and they're like waiting there like awkwardly. That's why makes out with her real quick. And then they come by. The mayor comes by to fix her car, and like right as that scene's ending, in the background you can see like the roadside assistance driving up. Yeah. If you remember that, it's not comments upon, but it's just there. It's like you said, Chris, the absurdity of life, but so well realized, and so like podunk little town that he's coming back to. He's walking from place to place, and the people are like, "Oh, I'll drive you here." They're like, "No, I can walk. Like I know where it is. Like it's fine." Right? And then they just fall, and like people like follow him on the street taking pictures and stuff. Yeah, so. The cinematography is fantastic, and little moments like that, and just all the shots made you feel as if you were following Daniel through his life, coming back to this town, realizing you cannot, in fact, go home again, and the style just emphasized that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the picture of the City Hall, the extra picture of Ava and, oh my God, Perone. I can't remember her husband's name.
I didn't even know. Yeah, right.
the Perones were up there. And it was like little sweet things, like where the fire department and the town queen or whatever wanted
town Miss Salas, I guess
Miss Salas wanted to drive from the thing. And so there's these little wonderfully sweet, genuine touches mixed in with this absurdity, and there's this hyper real sense about it, like especially at the end where the whole town seems to be like glaring at him as he's trying to leave. It's got this sense of invasion, but nothing is over the top. It's all works within its parameters.
Again, it's very subtle. But there's one scene. All right, Antonio, his friend. I don't know if any of you know. There's an English actor named Greg Davies who's fantastic and does remind me quite a bit of Antonio. There's one scene in there where he's dancing at the bar.
Yes,
which is absolutely phenomenally absurd.
It's ridiculous for sure, yeah. But it still makes sense. Like, you believe this character would do that. I think it's at the strip club, essentially. Not even the bar, really. But
he was like
he ends up cheating on his wife at that point. But I don't know, it's very...
But you're right. There's always like wonderful little slice of life moments that are emphasized, like highlighted by the style. So quite well done there.
Yeah, and you mean the whiskey strip karaoke bar that they went to?
Yeah, exactly.
And going to karaoke, you're like singing. Like,
no, he's not dancing. He's doing karaoke.
It is. Like,
no, he is dancing. He's not singing anything.
Is he just dancing?
He's just dancing.
But after going to karaoke, I think it was like last week where we saw
in real life. Yes.
Yeah, in real life we saw some.
He's just dancing.
Great performances in karaoke. So,
but some terrible ones.
Well, but it does not seem to
as you do in karaoke.
Yeah, it doesn't. What I'm saying is even that is not out of the absurdist.
Sure,
boundaries.
It still made sense, and it was a funny scene and well shot.
So we're all giving style a 1.
I think so.
Okay, and Scott, to you with recommendation.
Yes, I do recommend The Distinguished Citizen. Good find, fellas. Like like you said, you guys mentioned you did it like 2-man job the other week, and unfortunately that would have got messed up. But I'm glad I did see this movie. I'm glad I'm on this review because it's kind of the thing for me, and maybe it comes out my narcissistic tendencies of myself. But I could see myself being a character like this and living a story like this, and it was really entertaining throughout, from point A to point B. Everything we said, I think I might be giving a 10 at this point. But yes, I highly recommend it. It's sort of like a diamond in the rough feel. Like I feel as if this movie, I had never heard of it before you guys mentioned it. We were like finding it just to do our foreign, our explorations, as you mentioned, Chris. And yeah, I'm glad as hell we found this one, because if you're into it, it's fucking great. Like, I enjoyed the shit out of this movie, and I do recommend it.
Funny story on this. With Ian and I were going to do this together. Ian's like, find a film. So I was scouring, looking for things, and I found this African film, and I forgot we had done Timbuktu, but I gave him the wrong trailer. So what I thought was I'm like, well, I found this. It sounds interesting. Doesn't seem like it's going to be the happiest thing. I sent him this weird comedy, and he's just like, no, let's do South America. And I immediately went on, and it's like the top 18 Argentinian films on Netflix. I'm like, there's 18 of them on. And this was literally number 2, and I saw the trailer of it, and I'm like, well,
that's the winner.
That's the winner.
Yeah, man.
So, Ian, do you recommend this film?
I don't believe we gave this a 10 the first time around, but it has lasting impact, and I reminisce on this fondly, and I would recommend it to anyone into film. I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it to the casual viewer, but I think it's still a decent.
I still think they would enjoy it.
It's a very good film, and I think it rewards those who pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And
well said.
Yeah, and before the Ghost of Steve-O asks, I do think it's one of the best movies I've seen since doing the podcast.
I don't know if it's necessarily a 10 film. I'm giving it a 10, yes. I might, again, on some arbitrary non-Mott scale, I might bump it down slightly, but I think it's a damn strong film. Like I said, really, really entertaining. Like, you can get wrapped up into it pretty quickly if you're into it, and if you're anything like us, and just like you said, even if you're a bit more casual about it, I still think you'll have a good time enjoying this film.
I still give A Separation the best foreign film we've seen this year, but I think this is my number 2.
This isn't as intense, but I think it's still a really well done tale. So
I was actually going to say, if A Separation, which is probably one of the greatest films, this would be the flip side of that in terms of richness and depth of character. I mean, this is definitely more of a satire.
It's a bit more lighthearted.
But it's very grounded. Then you go to A Separation, and this is real. This is really happening. There's no hyper reality to it. This is a slice of life of a culture. Here is I would say one is an objective. Somewhat
exaggerated in this case.
But for the perspective of A Separation, its objectivity lies in its truth.
Sure.
Whereas I believe this is more of a subjective film. I mean, because every film's going to have a point of view to a certain degree, and I would say that this would be these two are my 2 favorite films, probably. Definitely of the foreign films, but probably 2 of my favorite films I have physically seen this year, even though neither one was released this year. I recommend this a great deal. And, I to the Ghost of Steve-O, yes, I would give this a 10.
It speaks to me, and I think it has a very broad appeal in general as well. So.
Yes, well, I mean, does
that mean we're giving it all a 10?
We're giving it a 10, and I think we all agree, because I mean, to all of us who are writers, I mean, all 4 of us are, in our own ways.
Pretend writers.
Well, yeah, no, but there's a narrative we all follow. I mean, you're a writer. Your game blogs are better than most of the stuff I read on Game Sutra, and so I think this appeals to all of us on a personal level. But I think, as we discussed, I agree with you guys. I think this has some broader based appeal to it.
Yeah, as a general narcissist, I just
exactly.
We're just we all it's a duality of everybody's nature. Let's say, but yeah, man. Okay, with that,
10, baby.
I've been Chris Morgan, and I've been here with Jonathan Ian Manzo.
I'm not going back to my hometown.
and Scott Thurlow.
And I have to alienate all my friends and former family as well. Good night.
Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or mods?